The first thing Antonio noticed wasn't the creature's eyes. It was the silence. Complete silence, like every cricket and nightbird just knew to stay quiet when it hunted. Antonio Freitas, a truck driver from Paraná, Brazil, had spent years on the road, driving the long stretches of the BR-376 highway. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could prepare him for the terror he would face that night. It was supposed to be an ordinary trip, just another job hauling cargo, just another weekend away from his family. But when Antonio pulled into that remote, dimly lit rest stop, he felt it, a chill, one that had nothing to do with the cool night air. Something felt wrong. Something was watching. He thought he heard rustling in the nearby bushes, but when he looked, there was nothing there. A fleeting shadow moved across the edge of his vision, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. The temperature seemed to drop suddenly, a cold that seeped into his bones. Antonio shook his head, trying to dismiss the unease, convincing himself it was just his tired mind playing tricks. And as the events of that night unfolded, Antonio would come face to face with a monstrous being, a creature that lurked not just in the darkness of the forest, but in the deepest shadows of his mind. Antonio had always been a skeptic. He prided himself on being practical. No time for ghost stories, no patience for things that could not be explained. He kept a small photo of his family on the dashboard, a reminder of why he did what he did, and hanging from his rearview mirror, a small wooden carving, his daughter's lucky charm, bless her heart. These things kept him grounded, kept him believing in the ordinary world. But that night, everything he believed would be challenged. After a peaceful weekend with his family, Antonio hit the road again. He made his way to a rest stop where truckers gathered before dawn. There he met Aparecido, a quiet, kind man, though Antonio noticed he seemed a little too tense. They decided to travel together to Mato Grosso, setting off that same night. As they drove, Aparecido kept looking out into the dark. Then he asked, almost like he could not hold it in any longer, if Antonio believed in the supernatural. Antonio just laughed, dismissing the idea as nonsense. But Aparecido was not joking. He said drivers had been seeing strange things out on this route, and even told Antonio how his uncle had encountered something, a creature that appeared out of the shadows one night, its glowing eyes and guttural growls forever etched into their minds. A dark creature that had haunted their family ever since. Antonio laughed it off, but that story lingered. He watched Aparecido fidgeting, looking out into the dark, almost like he expected something to come out of those shadows. Aparecido muttered a quiet prayer under his breath, his fingers brushing against a small amulet he wore around his neck. The fear in his eyes was palpable. His vulnerability laid bare in that dark, silent moment. Antonio could see it. This trip was not just about delivering cargo. Aparecido was confronting something that had haunted him for years. After a few more hours on the road, they received a message from the company that monitored the truck, instructing them to stop for rest. The company warned that if they did not comply, the truck would be locked until morning. Reluctantly, they pulled into a small, dimly lit rest area with only a few other trucks parked there. The rest stop was surrounded by dense forest, tall Araucaria trees, their needle-like leaves rustling gently in the wind, and clusters of vibrant bromeliads hanging from branches. The trees swayed, their branches casting long skeletal shadows across the ground. Fog began to roll in, adding an eerie stillness to the place, and the distant howls of animals seemed to fade into an unnatural quiet. The rest stop itself had an old, worn-down feel. 2 concrete bathrooms with chipped paint, a small convenience kiosk that looked closed for the night, and a handful of rickety picnic tables. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, casting an uneven glow that barely pierced the fog. After making a quick meal, Antonio decided to take a shower. As he headed to the bathroom, he noticed someone moving behind the trucks but paid it no mind. While he was showering, he heard a strange noise outside. The sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, grew closer, each step accompanied by a raspy, guttural breathing. Each inhale was a struggle, each exhale a death rattle. And then came a strong, foul odor of sulfur. Antonio quickly turned off the water, his heart pounding in his chest. His hands trembled as he got dressed, the adrenaline making it difficult to stay calm. He stayed silent, every muscle tensed, feeling the weight of the fear coursing through his veins. Suddenly, something slammed into the bathroom door, trying to break it down. It made 2 or 3 attempts before giving up and running off into the woods. Antonio ran back to the truck, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He shook Aparecido awake, his voice trembling as he said that something big had tried to attack him. His heart was still racing, the adrenaline making his hands unsteady as he glanced nervously towards the woods. They looked out towards the edge of the woods and saw a pair of glowing yellow eyes staring back at them. The first glimpse was just those eyes, fierce and almost burning with an unnatural intensity that seemed to pierce the darkness. The eyes blinked, shifting slightly, revealing movement, a partial view of something massive lurking just beyond the light. Aparecido urged Antônio to move slowly and not turn his back to whatever it was. They climbed into the truck, but Aparecido reminded him that they could not leave. The truck was locked until morning. They sat quietly, hoping the creature would just go away. Each second dragged on, the silence almost unbearable, punctuated only by Antônio's shallow, trembling breaths. Antônio could feel his heart thundering in his chest, each beat loud in the stillness. His fingers were cold and trembling, his whole body tense as he strained to hear any sign of movement. The fog seemed thicker now, the shadows among the trees shifting as if alive. The temperature seemed to drop gradually. Antônio could see his breath puffing out in misty clouds, and his hands started to go numb, the cold creeping in despite his thick jacket. He shivered uncontrollably, his body reacting to the unnatural chill that seemed to seep from the very air around them. The forest itself seemed to grow quieter, as if the world was holding its breath. Moments later, they saw the driver of a nearby truck get out, seemingly unaware of the danger. Antônio's breath hitched in his throat, his eyes wide with terror as a massive black figure emerged from behind the bathrooms. The fog shifted around it, and the shadows seemed darker and more menacing near the creature, adding to its terrifying aura. The creature stepped into full view, a monstrous figure that looked like a huge dog walking on two legs. It had long, matted fur that hung in dirty clumps, its glowing yellow eyes now fully visible. The creature's mouth opened, revealing sharp, stained fangs, and its claws, long and jagged, glinted faintly in the moonlight. Its breath came out in a series of low, guttural growls, and Antônio could hear the sound of its claws scraping against the metal of the trucks, a screech that seemed to vibrate through the very frame of the vehicle. The creature's presence felt like an unbearable weight pressing down on Antônio's chest, an oppressive force that made it hard to breathe. He could feel a deep, primal fear clawing at the edges of his mind. It moved with a disturbing combination of jerky and fluid motions, almost as if it were trying to mimic human behavior, but could not quite get it right. Its presence carried with it an aura of pure malevolence, a suffocating dread that made the air seem colder. There was a brief, agonizingly quiet moment. Antônio could hear the wind rustling through the trees, the distant drip of condensation from the bathroom roof. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat pounding in his ears as he prayed silently that the creature would leave. Aparecido shouted for the man to get back in his truck, but it was too late. The creature lunged, knocking the man to the ground. It moved with terrifying speed, muscles rippling under thick fur as it dragged the man towards the woods. The sounds it made were not just roars, it growled and snarled, a deep guttural sound that vibrated in Antônio's chest, a sound that spoke of primal rage. Aparecido grabbed a revolver from his bag, opened the window, and fired a shot into the air. Antônio quickly counted the bullets left in the revolver, 5. The creature paused, its ears twitching, but then it continued dragging the man. The noise had woken other truckers, who came running to help. As they approached, Aparecido fired again, this time hitting the creature. A piercing shriek tore through the night, a sound that seemed to claw its way up from the depths of hell. It left him deeply unsettled, as if it did not belong in the natural world. The creature dropped the man and retreated into the darkness. Many of the truckers ran in fear. One stood frozen in place, unable to move, his eyes wide with shock, while another shouted in panic, his voice cracking as he stumbled backwards. But Antônio and a few others rushed to help the injured man. Antônio looked back and saw Aparecido running towards the truck, dropping his gun in the process. The creature reappeared, now focused solely on Aparecido. It pounded on the truck, trying to get in. Each impact made the truck shudder, and the temperature seemed to plummet. Antônio's fingers went numb as he gripped the gun, the biting chill seeping through his clothes, his breath visible in short, anxious puffs. Doubt gnawed at him, fear whispering insidious lies, But then a surge of resolve flooded his veins. His thoughts flickered to his family, the photo on the dashboard, his daughter's lucky charm hanging from the rearview mirror. He could almost see her smile, hear her laughter. He could not let this creature take away his chance to return home to them. Most of the truckers had fled, but Antônio could not abandon his friend. He took a deep breath, pushed past his fear, grabbed the fallen gun, and climbed on top of a nearby truck, hoping to get a clear shot. Slowly, Antônio made his way across the top of the truck until he was above Aparecido's vehicle. He could see the creature below, a hulking figure covered in dark, filthy fur, with a head like that of a wolf or a dog. Its eyes burned with rage, its breath coming out in ragged huffs that misted in the cold air. It was trying to reach Aparecido through the window. Just as it grabbed Aparecido's arm with its clawed hand, Antônio fired, hitting the beast. It let go, snarling in pain. With one powerful leap, it jumped onto the truck where Antônio was standing. Antônio ran towards the back of the truck, the creature following close behind. He slipped on a patch of slick metal, his foot skidding out from under him. For a heart-stopping moment, he almost lost his balance, his arms flailing as he tried to regain his footing. The creature was nearly upon him, its guttural growls rumbling in his ears, but Antônio managed to catch himself, pushing forward with renewed determination. Its movements were swift yet awkward, a chilling reminder of its unnatural nature. The wind whipped through the rest stop, carrying the smell of wet earth and the dense vegetation of the surrounding forest. Antônio could hear the heavy thuds of the creature's feet behind him, the truck creaking under its weight. He fired the remaining 2 shots, each one echoing through the night, and the creature fell off the truck, landing heavily between the parked vehicles. Antônio held his breath, waiting, unsure if the creature would rise again. The silence was unbearable, each second dragging on as he strained to see any sign of movement. Antônio hurried to check on Aparecido, who was injured but alive. Other truckers came to their aid, and they could hear the creature's heavy, labored breathing as it lay hidden in the darkness, its presence still radiating a palpable sense of threat. By dawn, the police and an ambulance arrived. They took Aparecido and the injured driver to the hospital. When the police searched the area, they found nothing. No creature, no tracks, just the lingering smell of sulfur and the memory of those glowing eyes. Antônio and the other truckers were left to wonder what they had really seen that night. Though Antônio had always been a skeptic, he could not deny what he had witnessed. This story, adapted from Antônio's account originally shared on the NS Occulto YouTube channel, reminds us that sometimes the greatest terrors lie not only in the shadows, but also within our own beliefs. Have you encountered something lurking in the darkness? DeadNetStudios wants to hear your story of unexpected encounters with the unknown, where fear and humanity intertwine. Acts of courage and compassion can shine a light in even the darkest places. Send your story to deadnetstudios@gmail.com and help us bring to light the mysteries hidden in the wilderness. The night is long, but every story shared brings us closer to understanding the unknown.
In the shadows of the digital night, we've wandered far and seen some sights, from haunting tales to eerie lights. DeadNetStudios, where fear ignites. So long, farewell from the crimson hollows. We'll be back again with more tales to follow. Keep the lights dimmed and your curiosity high. For in DeadNet's realm, the spirits never die. We've danced with ghosts, chased legends on, through cryptid codes, stories untold. In cyberspace, where mysteries unfold, our journey's been daring, brave and bold. So long, farewell from the darkened halls, where shadows whisper and the unknown calls. Keep your eyes wide and your mind astir, for the mysteries of DeadNet are a haunting blur. In the world of strange and the unexplained, we find our stories wildly untamed. the studio's end, we take a little rest. They find the shackles every best. So long, farewell from the crimson hollows. We'll be back again with more tales to follow. Keep the lights dimmed and your curiosity